Fantastic, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Christian. I will be, facilitating this presentation in conjunction with Microsoft and Veeam. I'd like to welcome everybody. If you have any questions, please post it in the Q&A session. And we will make this as interactive as possible. Having said that, if you have your phones ready, there will be a couple of QR scans. Throughout today's presentation, we'll be asking a couple of questions. So while we get started, let's get those phones ready. And Dave, you can just click us through the next slide and go through the agenda. As you all know, my name's Christian. I'm the account executive for the licensing solutions here at Data3. Today, we'll be joined by Dan and Monica from Microsoft. We'll go into a deep dive into the A5 suite of the Microsoft products. Following them, we'll then hear from Will and Cassie from Veeam, who will showcase the latest feature sets of the latest release of Veeam for backup for Microsoft 365. We'll go into a Q&A session. Dave will wrap up with some Microsoft Teams rooms and a Connect EDU session. And finally, we'll be giving away a set of Surface headphones for all those who stay till the end and are participating actively in our presentation today. Now, just want to quickly introduce Talia to the team. Talia has joined our team this year. She is the new Trent for everyone who has been dealing with Trent for the past few years. Talia will be your first point of contact for all those general software inquiries, quotes and orders and whatnot. And also you may have heard from Liz. Liz joins our team from last year. She is your first point of contact once again for all things related to hardware, that's end user compute, servers, networking, so forth. And we all know Dave, who is basically running the education team nationally for Data3. Now, I just wanted to quickly post a quick question to set some context for us on the receiving end. This is where if you grab your phones and scan that QR code, just really quickly using one or many few words, what component of Microsoft 365 would you like to hear most information from while we have Microsoft here in our presentation? This just sort of help us set a little bit of context and position the focus for Microsoft. I'll give you a couple of seconds, hopefully we can get a couple of, at least a few of you to help us with this area. I'll do the same myself. And as we start hearing some responses, we will then hand the time over to our friends at Microsoft. Okay, we're starting to get some responses here. Licensing, A5 features, Power Apps was the one that came up first. All right, I think we're starting to get a bit of a picture here. Fantastic. All right, well, having now seen a good idea of what people are wanting from this session, I'll hand the time over to Dan Dan and Monica from Microsoft.
Hi team, hi everybody, really good to see you today. So I'm Dan, I'm a technology strategist attached to education. You do have, I'm looking at the word cloud here, and it's fantastic that there's so many interesting areas. You know, we can do follow-up webinars because obviously there's a lot of stuff in this this compliance and security area which people are kind of trying to look at. You know, we've done some hackathons and things with Power Apps, for example. So there's lots of things that we can actually do to help and support you going forward in this area. So let's go through some of these things. So when we're looking at A5, you know, lots of you asked in our word cloud there about the differences. You know, what I tend to think about is kind of three areas, right? So obviously security and compliance is a big area, and we'll talk about that in a bit of detail today. We do have a security and a compliance kind of specialist that's attached to your accounts. So if you need deep down level guidance on security compliance, let us know. Also reach out to the Data 3 team. We've got a heap of compliance and security folks that can support you as well along that journey. And then also, I know Dave might be talking about this a little bit later on, but lots of people are thinking when they go for A5, they think, well, do we need to bolster security and compliance? Do we need to start looking at telephony and meetings and Teams voice and Teams rooms and all of that? And then also people are doing lots on analytics and Power BI. So usually if you're doing one or two of those things, then people buy A5. Otherwise, you can buy mini suites and cherry pick the things you might want. So it might be that you want security and compliance, and Mon will talk about this in a little while. And later on that, for example, you might want more information about Teams, and you might not be ready for Teams voice yet, you know, for example, or you might not be doing anything with Power BI. So that's the thing to think about, I suppose, the ready reckoner if you're ready for A5. Moving on, let me just move these slides forward. So there is an increasing threat in education, as we all know. I don't want to scaremonger people because we're not in the game of kind of saying you need security, you know, you need to buy more stuff or whatever, you know. But what we are seeing is a list of threats that are coming through from state actors and things like that. And also lots of things happening with the notifiable breaches report that people send in PII via emails and compliance things. Mon's going to share some things in the Q&A window for you to have a look at, but we've got a digital defense report, really worth looking at, highlights a real ransomware attack on a school in text in that report, which is fantastic. Not fantastic that this happened to the school, but it's really good to read through. Then secondly, there's a mandatable notifiable breaches report out. They do it every kind of quarter and every half, so the latest report is coming through with that as well. So you can see where education actually is kind of good gaps, I suppose, and it's usually around things like people sending and non-transmitting emails and stuff like that. So what we see in here, and you can agree or not with me, but we've seen the simplification of the security landscape allows you to save a lot of investments, but it also closes gaps. The problem we've got is people have picked on, I suppose in quotes, you could call it best of breed solutions over the time. So you might have picked different providers for different things. And what that then creates is gaps, because some conflict with, say, the Microsoft tools you're using. So you end up having to turn off things like exchange protection because you're using another email, you know, scanning tool, and then things start to kind of push the boundaries and kind of open gaps for you with your security posture. So you've seen a lot of people start to think about these tools. Now they generally talked about in kind of these kind of areas: identity and access management, threat protection, information protection, your endpoint management, obviously, and then CASB, which is your cloud app security brokers, right? Which is, you know, speaking to the school the other day, so that's Microsoft Cloud App Security, or Defender for Cloud. We have changed a lot of the names of the tools here, so Monica will tell me off if I use the wrong ones. But Cloud App Security, you know, I was speaking to a school, last school system, the Scott A5 recently, and they said one school, they identified 1,300 apps that the school was using, you know, various things, you know, online apps on their iPads, apps on their devices, which weren't going through, you know, there's a lot of shadow IT appearing. So they didn't really get the telemetry on that. So, you know, there are things that you can start to kind of simplify now to move forward. I'm just trying to move the slides here, but it doesn't seem to be working for me. Hold on. Come on, slides. Where are you? Hello, slides. For some reason, I'm going to have to request control. Can you drive the slides for me? Whoever's got main control there. Would that be okay? Might be you, Div. It might be having bandwidth issues. So can you move the next slide? Cool. So it is about simplification and saving time. And when we look at this next slide, if you go back one, yeah, go forward one. Sorry. Go to the one with all the kind of. Go to the next slide, Div. Sorry. There we go. So, you know, there's a lot of different tools and integration points here when we're thinking about what we do and what we don't do. So this is kind of a good area that you can kind of think about. Lots of the things that your A5 security can cover you, from data encryption, key management, anomaly detection, and the like. And then there's things with our ISV partners can do much better than we can. You know, for example, Veeam are talking later on about some of the security and backup solutions that they've got, and they've got a great solution in place there to support you in that area. So there's lots of ISV partners you might be working with. They utilize Azure, they utilize things like Teams to support you with governance and support you with lots of different areas there to tighten up the tools and technologies you've got. But, you know, it is important to start thinking about, you know, your costs as well, so that they don't blow out. Next slide, please, Dave. So protecting your attack chain, this is quite an important one for us. And this just steps us through an attack, and it gives you an idea of what products are available. So, you know, a phishing attack happens in school, somebody gets an email, and you click through this, Dave, as it goes. You've got somebody that opens an attachment or clicks on a URL or browses a website that they shouldn't. And basically, that's where you get your kind of first level of kind of catch, I suppose, around your Exchange Online protection. Do you want to build this slide out, Dave? Sorry. Great, thanks. Just keep building it through. So that's where Defender for Office sits, okay? Obviously, you also got the identity area as well. And we got our identity protection tools in place around Defender for Identity as well. Obviously, you've got Azure Active Directory Plan 1 in A3, and in A5, if you were going to go through that, you've got Azure Active Directory Plan 2. Now, the difference generally in security around these tools is when you start thinking about the automation and the threat hunting and the things like that you can do automatically around AI and things. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at A3, you've got lots of tools in there that kind of support you and secure your environment. But what it doesn't do is the automated threat hunting and give you lots of those reports and lots of the AI in the background. So that's what you've got to think about in terms of security and compliance. If you're more of those automations, those reports coming to you and stopping those things for you, you know, in their tracks as they go, you know, then you're looking at the A5 element. A3 will actually catch the majority of your threats that happen, but then A5 gives you that AI and that reporting and that ability to do investigations and things like that. So you also got your Defender for Endpoint as well. Now there's a little change in that which we'll talk about in a second, but obviously Defender for Endpoint is something that is a hot topic at the minute, and Mon can talk to you a little bit about what you've got access to around there. But when we're looking at Microsoft Endpoint, you know, lots of staff are putting those on their devices at the minute. It isn't a student use benefit, unfortunately, because that is a premium product. But you know, when I am talking to schools about that, it's also thinking about the other tools and technologies that can support you as you go, right? Because there is a Defender Plan 1 available as well. So that's where those things get caught. So they get caught in Office when things are happening already. They get caught with the identity as well, because our identity and Defender for Identity is checking against the dark web and finding out if there's any stolen credentials. It's checking for conditional access. It's checking and pushing to MFA. And then your endpoints are also really important in there. And we see a lot of this as well. Obviously, Intune manages MacBooks, iPads, PCs, and the like. So, and on your Android phones and things like that. And that's where it's really important to also have that protection. When you start using other tools and technologies to manage some of those, then you have to look into other security consoles. You know, you can't find out, well, if we've got a compromise on that device, then where's that, has that been compromised via email? Has it been compromised via the device itself? Has it got any ransomware on it? And you can't get that telemetry back through. So I would say to keep in the Microsoft stack where you can, especially around your kind of mobile device management aspects as well. So if you keep going through there, the users in the system, if you build that out a little bit more, Defender for Cloud Apps is what I talked about earlier on. And that's where you can start thinking about, looking at the applications of Shadow IT that's available and are happening in your school, where teachers are, using things that might be uncompliant for you. And then also capturing that information protection element as well. Now, if you want to work on information protection or any of these tools inside, two things you can do. You can reach out to your account executive, reach out to Data3. You can also go to fasttrack.microsoft.com and you can actually request fast track help, so fast track engineers can support you. They don't touch the keyboards like a partner would, or people you got working for you would, but they can give you some advice on that. But also, reach out to Data3, reach out to ourselves, because we've got compliance and security specialists who can help you. But that's all about protecting the information you've got. What happens if somebody sends something outside your environment? How do you protect that document? How do you kind of put that in detonation chambers and the like, and secure that data and make sure that any sensitive data is secured? And Defender for Cloud Apps is the one that gives you that Shadow IT protection. And all of this, the final build, is when you go next there, Dave, that's about your unified platform and unified portal to see that information, right? So that's quite important as well, because if you're looking at different consoles, then it's very hard to correlate a security threat. So it's hard to hunt that threat through your system when everything is in different places, right? So let's build through the next slides here. So the attack chain kind of gives you a good idea of where those things are and what those tools are called, okay? And they're all in A5. Now, there is a new tool that we've got called Defender for Endpoint Plan 1. The way that differs from Plan 2 is that this just gives you the light surface reduction attack support, I suppose, and then gives you that next gen protection, which is embedded inside Windows 10 as well. So it's kind of the light touch element of Defender for Endpoint, and more will touch on where this is available in your SKUs at the minute. But when you start thinking about really developing that more, then you start thinking about Plan 2. So if you go to the next slide, so this is the full-on, premium solution of Defender for Endpoint. So that's got the things there. So it's the same diagram, it's just fancier logos. You've got the attack surface reduction and the next gen protection, but you've also got endpoint detection and response and all the automation and remediation tools. And you've also got access to Microsoft threat experts that can actually support you in any ransomware or any security issues that you've actually got that happen in your school. If things do happen, always give us a yell, because we do have, we will pull all the stops out to support you with threat hunting and bring in our kind of red and blue teams to kind of support you if there's an urgent issue in the school. Obviously, we won't rely on the fact that you've got particular licensing. We will help as best you can. But in A5, you've got lots more of that remote auto investigation and remediation around there in Defender for Endpoint. And again, we have pushed hard on the product teams, and we still are, to try to get that in the student use benefit. But unfortunately, the deep integrated cost of that tool and service to run around the AI and things is actually prohibitive at the minute. But we keep pushing on the team, and Mon's doing her best, and I'm doing my best to keep pushing that through. But what most schools are doing are utilizing this for staff at the minute, and picking that up as we go through. So the next, there's also a bit on Azure Defender for servers there. The next thing to think about as well, some schools are thinking about this, is around the SIEM solutions, and this is how that fits together. So lots of schools are looking at Sentinel for that SIEM solution. So you've got all your Defender telemetry, you've got all your Azure and cloud telemetry, which you might be utilizing as well, and also other third-party tools. So we've got, some of my accounts might be using Google, you might be using Cisco, you might be using other tools and technologies in your network. You can bring all of those third-party and partner, telemetry through. and then view that across the top in your Azure Sentinel tool, which sits inside Azure. So, all of the telemetry from Office 365 goes in there. You can set that up now. You can bring all of that data through for free, and utilize that and see what's going on in your environment, spin up a trial, do some experiments with that, see what's going on, and have a bit of a play. But reach out to us if you need more help with that. So moving on, when we look at the next element, so I'm looking at the chat and things as well. We will address all the chat, and Mon's trying to pick any questions up as we go. When you're looking at A3 and A5, somebody asked in the word cloud earlier on the differences, so it's where you get the differences in products from AADP1 and AADP2. So the things of the AADP2 are things around your privileged identities in there. You've got a deeper level of integration. You've got more access to single sign-on for multiple apps and things like that. So there's a lot in, Azure Active Directory Plan, so we can spend an hour talking about on its own. Intune, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, is across A3 and A5, where there's where information protection steps up. Is you get more classification automatically around documents and encryption, which you can share inside and outside your organization. So you can keep tabs on documents that leave your organization with Information Protection Plan 2. And then also with A5, you get Cloud App Security, like I said, which is visibility of all those like shadow IT apps that you get access to there. So the next slide, moving across, before we skip across them on in a second, there is a comparison here of where the things land. Obviously we've looked at security compliance here, and I think if you're looking at security specifically, then happy to do a session on those security tools. We have security specialists to help you and literally step you through, but there are literally 25-30 tools in there around security. I think Mon shared the M365 maps in the chat. She's nodding her head. So make sure you look at that, and make sure you have a look at the individual tools and technologies. You click on those and it takes you to relevant documentation should you have queries about anything. But you can see here that the phone system and audio conferencing, the AAD Plan 2 and ATP, they've renamed of Defender, and Cloud App Security, they're all in A5. They're highlighted here for you, and then you've got all that compliance around information barriers, customer lockbox, insider risk management, audit, e-discovery, all those compliance tools, they're all in there. Well, there's a winner for the headphones, Prasanna from Canterbury College. Whoop, whoop. Surface headphones are amazing. And then also the people doing data and analytics would be excited about the Power BI Pro edition inside A5 as well. So whether you're utilizing one or more of those suites of technologies would be the decision whether you do A3 or A5. So I think a final slide for me is where we bring the three together. So just to remind you, I've highlighted these in yellow because we've talked a bit about security and compliance there. Again, anything you need, give us a yell around those, but it can go in the weeds quite quickly. So, we do separate them out a little bit, but anybody interested in meetings and calling, also, people are moving to those call plans now, give us a yell around that. Happy to kind of support, and also around analytics, if you're looking at analytics and using Power BI Pro and the features around there. One person did say, sorry, man, I'm eating your time, but one person did ask in the chat about Power Apps. Power Apps for Office 365, is it in your plan as well? That means you can utilize, the Power Apps platform using things like Excel and that as your data store and Microsoft Lists. There are premium connectors if you want to add things like ServiceNow and stuff like that, but lots of people, I know one of my customers is doing hackathons. I did a hackathon within a large diocese that I manage, where we did Power Apps, and they were doing things like staff absence, Power Apps for Power Automate for expenses, and there was something we did with special educational needs as well. So there's heaps of use cases, and keen to do a hackathon with your school or a group of schools around Power Apps. So there's a lot in there. Hopefully you can see the value in the A5 suite. Think about automation, and I'll pass across to Monica now to kind of give you some of that licensing flavor.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. That was a great overview on A5. I'm just going to spend the next couple of minutes just wrapping up. I saw when you put your survey results in, licensing was big, so that makes me really excited. So I'll wrap up on how you can actually buy A5 and the different options available to you. So as Dan summarized very nicely, the way to think about A5 is those 4 main categories. So security, compliance, analytics, and voice. There's a few different ways to buy A5. Now, if you want everything that Dan spoke about, you can buy A5 as a suite. So you get access to everything that Dan spoke about for your faculty and staff. Now, a lot of questions we get asked is around students. Now, for students, if you do license A5 for all your faculty and staff, you do get the products you can see on the bottom screen. So those 4 products you get for your students at no additional cost, okay? So if you do license A5 for everyone, you will get those 4 additional products at no additional cost. Now, one product that I think Dan mentioned is not on there is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, okay? So just want to emphasize again, that is not a student use benefit. However, if you do want pricing on that, we do have some significantly discounted pricing available to you under this agreement. So please reach out to Data3 to get that pricing, okay? Now, you don't need to license all your students with that product. You can license a subset, but just want to put that out there. We have been able to get some special pricing for you. But if you are an A5 customer and you do license that for all your education qualified users, you do get the 4 products at the bottom of the screen at no additional cost for your students. Next slide, please. Now, as Dan mentioned, if you don't want everything in A5, we know it sometimes can be a bit of a stretch if you say, look, we're not ready for the voice component now, or we're not ready for the analytics component, you can just buy what we call A5 security, okay? And A5 security unlocks the products that you can see on the screen there. It just is that security element from the A5 suite. Now, one key thing to note, guys, is if you do go A5 security, you don't get all the same student use benefits that you would if you did pick up A5. So just note you do lose out on 2, but you do still get some student use benefits. We do have some special pricing on this one as well, available under your agreement. So if you want to do a bit of a cost model saying, okay, this is how A5 security is going to cost, this is what A5 is going to cost, you can see that A5 security will be cheaper. But if you want A5 security and you want to add things like voice or you want to add things like Power BI, it then may be more cost effective to go A5. So it really depends on what the needs are at the end of the day. You know, you might buy A5 security now, and then at your next anniversary in January, you might switch to A5 if you find more value with the voice and analytics component as well. So just another option. Just emphasizing if A5 is not the right one at the moment, you can buy the mini suite, which is A5 security. Next slide, please. And lastly, if you don't want everything in A5 again, we do have A5 compliance. So that is available for you to procure under your agreement. So A5 compliance can be bought as a mini suite. And then we have sub-suites within that if you do want just specific components of compliance. One thing I really want to call out here is there is no student use benefit when it comes to compliance. Okay, so if your students require compliance products, we have been able to secure discounts on a few of these products. So Data3 does have the pricing, but just note there are no student use benefits on the compliance products. So that was a quick, short, sharp on the licensing component. But like I said, it's quite flexible. In summary, you can buy a lot of the components as standalone. As you start to want to use more of the components, it may be more cost effective to go A5 security. And then if you want the entire A5 suite, you know, the voice, analytics, compliance, and security, it will definitely be more cost effective to go A5. And if you do cover it for all your staff, you do unlock those 4 student use benefits as well. So that's it from me. Any further questions, feel free to follow up, and I'll now hand it over to the Veeam team. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Monica. I'm just going to share my screen. So I hope everyone can see that. Is that all good?
Yeah, we've got that.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us for this this webinar, and thanks Data3 and Microsoft for having us join us. My name is Will Stazenko, and I am a senior engineer here at Veeam. Today, I'm just going to be talking to you about some of the new features in Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365, and also how you can protect your data in Microsoft 365 using Veeam. Also alongside me, I have Cassie Craig. She's our inside sales representative looking after our customers in the educational sector, and she'll also be providing some information around some promotions we have available to you. So as you join us for this webinar today, hosted on Microsoft Teams, I'm sure that these numbers in front of you, they come as no surprise. Organizations big and small continue to adopt this cloud platform at a rapid pace. In April of 2020, Microsoft 365 reached 258 million users, and it's estimated that there are now around 300 million plus users in 2022. A large portion of this growth was created by the transition to remote working driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, but also with the drive for cloud adoption by many organizations. So with Microsoft 365, it eliminates the need for organizations to manage the hardware and the software required for these systems. And instead, IT can focus on building solutions to kind of propel the business forward. So now, even though Microsoft takes on the management of the infrastructure built under the 365 platform and is responsible for the uptime, maintenance, and the security of the services, it's the individual customer's responsibility to be in control of their data and meet the needs of their compliance and legal requirements. So when it comes to protecting this data, Veeam is the #1 provider of Microsoft 365 Backup, with over 220,000 downloads of the product and over 11 million paid users protected by the solution. So Veeam Backup for Office 365, it provides the capability to protect your data across the 4 main services that make up the Microsoft 365 platform, which are Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and Microsoft Teams. With Microsoft 365, it's your data, you control it, and that's your responsibility to protect it. So Veeam Backup for 365, it eliminates the risk of losing access and control over your data. So that data, that your data is always protected and accessible. So Veeam is a fully software-driven solution. It enables you to back up and protect all of your users' data, regardless of whether you are mid-migration, fully migrated, or even if you're running a hybrid setup with 365. Veeam can protect your 365 data, as well as any on-premise Exchange and SharePoint data you still may have existing as well in your environment. So with this solution, protecting your data can't be simpler. You can back up your 365 data through the means of simple wizard-based backup policies. The policies can be as complex or as simple as you like, targeting your entire 365 subscription or specific users, groups, or granular 365 data. And they can be run weekly, daily, or even as often as every 5 minutes. Now, unlike other backup providers, Veeam provides you flexible options as to where you store your backup data. With Veeam, you have the option to store your backup data on-premise or in the cloud in object storage, such as Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, AWS S3, or any other sort of S3 compatible object storage offering. Another key differentiator between Veeam and other vendors is that you own this storage. And this means that you own your backup data, and therefore you're not locked into a specific vendor, providing you the freedom to leave and take your data at any time. So you provide the storage that you want to use, and doing so, you also control the cost and, more importantly, the ownership of the data. Now, once you have your data protected through the means of a backup, at some stage you're likely going to want to restore it. Veeam also provides some very powerful e-discovery capabilities that can be used to easily search through your backups by specifying granular and unique search criteria, allowing you to quickly find the content you want when you need to restore it. Now, whilst I'm on the topic of recovery options, let's move to the next slide. We provide up to 45 different ways to restore your Microsoft 365 data. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk you through every single one of them. It's going to go a lot longer than we need to. But we do it through our Veeam Explorers. Now, each of these Explorers are custom built with the application that's being backed up in mind. So we have an Explorer for each of the different platforms within 365. Now, as you can see, of each of the platforms, we present you with many restore options specific to the type of data you're looking to restore in its recognized native format. So, for example, in a few clicks, you can easily perform a full recovery of all of your Exchange Online data, restoring every mailbox, public folder, and shared group mailbox in the organization back to your tenancy. Alternatively, you can easily search and restore a single email, folder, calendar event, or mailbox item that could have, may have been accidentally deleted as well from a user's mailbox. Another example that probably specifically more would apply to schools and colleges is that if you're using class notebooks with your students, you or a teacher may need to recover a particular student's homework from their OneNote. Now, this can also be easily done through the OneDrive Explorer, and you can then restore that notebook as a direct replacement of the document, or you can actually restore a side-by-side copy. The final thing I wanted to mention, and I'll be showing you later in the demonstration, is that in version 6, we have now introduced a self-service restore portal. Now, with this portal, it provides your users a centralized location to efficiently divide, restore permissions, and access backup data across your organization. This is incredibly useful for you because it means you can provide the restore access to your students or your teachers without the need to provide them direct access to the backup server. Therefore, we're going to reduce the overall demand of on your IT team to perform restores, and it'll allow them to focus on performing other important work within the school. Now, there are two ways you can provide this self-service access. This permission can be provided directly to the end users, allowing them to perform restores of their Exchange, SharePoint, or OneDrive data as needed. Or if providing the students with that access isn't something that quite suits your internal policies, you also have the option to delegate the restore operator permission to specific users within your organization instead. Now, this may be to a junior or first-line member of your IT team, or it could be providing this permission to teachers within the school so they can perform restores on behalf of the students they teach. Either way, in doing so, this is going to allow you, either your students or your teachers, to log into a secure portal using native 365 authentication, and they're going to be able to perform restores of that 365 data from the most recent restore point without having to engage your IT resources to do so. So a quick look on how this works. So the user or the teacher can log into the self-service portal, and they're going to provide their Microsoft 365 credentials. That authentication is then passed through to our internal REST API, and it sends on the token to Microsoft for validation. Once Microsoft validates that authentication, it will then allow the user to continue to access self-service portal, and then they can go on to perform the restores from the portal. Another common theme we're seeing across organizations is an increased requirement to retain users' data, and more specifically across the education sector. Educational organizations are now required to retain student data for much longer periods of time. And this can vary depending on the country and state. But for example, in the ACT in New South Wales, the suggested disposal action for records holding students' personal information is to retain until student reaches age of 25 or for 7 years, and whichever is later then destroy. So with that in mind, in the future, schools may become subject to audits and legal proceedings where a spotlight will be shown on their past actions. And with that, it's important that you have a solution where you can store that data cost effectively. So in the world of backups, there is a golden rule, and that is it's one that's recommended you should always follow, and it's the 3-2-1 backup rule, which states you should always have 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types and 1 of them kept off-site. Now, with the introduction of the backup copy job in Veeam Backup for 365 version 6, it allows you to do just that. So if you're backing your data up to object storage, whether that be an on-premise appliance or cloud-based, you can now create a backup copy of that additional information and save it off to a cloud-based archive object storage. With this backup copy, we support sending your backups to either Amazon S3 Glacier, Glacier Deep Archive, or Microsoft Azure Blob Archive tier as well. And this allows you to do a backup copy direct to low-cost object storage for your long-term retention. So I'll quickly give you a high-level overview of the solution and how it works before I'll just jump into a demo and show you a little bit more about how easy it is to back up your data and then perform a restore. So the solution, it works in 3 stages. There is the protect, store, copy, and recover. So on the protect side of things, like I mentioned to you earlier, we can protect all of your 365 data across the 4 different platforms, which is Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. And like I said, we can also protect Exchange and SharePoint data if you're in a hybrid scenario as well. The second part is where we're going to store that data. So like I said, we support storing that in object storage. So that can be AWS S3, any sort of S3 compatible storage. So it doesn't have to be any of the big clouds, but then we also offer IBM Cloud and Microsoft Azure Blob Storage as well. So you're not restricted to one type of storage, and you're not restricted to the amount of the number of repositories and the type of repositories that you use to store your data. Now, as I alluded to earlier, copy is the additional feature we introduced with version 6. And so if you're using object storage, we now provide you the option to take backup copies of your data and store it in cost-effective object storage, as I mentioned. And then finally, like I said, you at some point you're going to want to recover that data, and you do that through our custom built Veeam Explorers, which allows you to restore, save, export, or send a copy of, or alternatively, users can actually use a self-service restore portal to perform the restore themselves. All right, so I'm just going to jump over to our demo environment. Just bear with me. You should all be able to see that. So this is the 365 product. It's very straightforward. It takes probably around 15 to 20 minutes to initially install and configure. So you have this one console. This is where you're going to manage all of your tenancies. So you can have one or more tenancies within here. Then from a backup infrastructure point of view, the repositories that I mentioned to you earlier, they're all listed here. And like I said, we support both traditional on-premise storage as well as object storage, which can be a lot more efficient in terms of storing your 365 backup data. So I'm just going to jump into one of the policies that I've got here. And so how it works is you can actually you create your policies through the wizard-driven backup job policies here. You can give it a name, you can give it a description. So if you've got a large IT team, they can actually log in and they can see exactly what this policy is set to protect. Now, if you have a tenancy of less than 2,000 users, you can actually back up everything directly through one policy with a very set and forget sort of mindset. But I mean, ideally, we recommend that you split these policies up. But in terms of what you can protect individual users, groups, and that can be based on distribution groups, Microsoft groups, any sort of groupings that exist in 365. They can be used. One traditional one is using, one common one, sorry, is using the all in school or whatever. You can also select to protect any sort of SharePoint sites, Microsoft Teams, or as I said earlier, you can actually protect the entire organization. And you can drill down a little bit more and actually make the policy specific to what you want to protect within that organization. So this policy here would protect my organization, but it's only going to protect the Exchange data. Now we move along, you can also make exclusions. So you might want to remove some particular users from your backup for whatever reasons, or any other sort of items. And then you're going to select basically where you're going to store that data and which backup proxy it will use. So the backup proxy is just a concept that exists within the product. You typically don't need to have any more than one unless you exceed 4,000 users. So the final part of this is just where you set the scheduling. So as I said earlier, you can set it to run daily, weekly, or even periodically down to every 5 minutes. So once you've backed up the data, you can actually jump into our restore wizards, and you can open one of the Veeam Explorers. And as I mentioned, everything is displayed to you as if it's in its native format. So I can quickly drill down here, and I can browse particular users' mailboxes and find particular content that I want to restore. Now, in a larger school setting or any other organization, this can be a lot bigger. It might be a little bit more difficult to find particular content, especially if it dates back to a particular period of time. So what I can do is I can use our advanced search wizard and set some criteria here of exactly what I want to find. So in this particular situation, I'm looking for an email from somebody called Mary. It went to somebody called John. And we also know it had an attachment, and the attachment name was related to their homework. So once we've done all that, we hit start. Take just a couple of seconds, and it should start to basically search our backups and return us a result based on whether the that particular item exists in the backup. There we go. Once it's found it, I have the option to just right-click here. I can do a direct restore to John's mailbox. I can also restore it to somebody else's mailbox. I can export it as a PST. That's the same as I can do with their mailbox or any other folder. And I also save a copy of the file or send a copy on. Now, all of this is one of the restore capabilities. All of this is audited in the product, so you don't have to worry about your admins kind of snooping around through the particular content, because obviously the ability to preview is pretty powerful. And then the last thing I was going to quickly show you before I switch back is the restore portal. So just bear with me. I'll just get my password for that account. Sorry about this. There we go. So this is the self-service restore portal that I mentioned. So the authentication right now has just gone through our REST API to Microsoft, and then this can be either the user or the teacher. And if this is the teacher, they can go ahead and they can restore particular content from within here. So they might be running a class notebook that they need to restore a copy of. And if it is the teacher, like I say, you can delegate the permissions for them to perform restores for the students. So all they have to do is click change scope, and they can then jump straight into another user's mailbox backups. In this state, it could be the student themselves, and select particular items from their backup, add them to the restore list, and then restore them directly without having to involve IT. So with that brings to the end of my demo. I've just got a couple of other things. So before I finish up, I have a list of different resources available to you for Veeam Backup 365, as well as some details of our upcoming data protection event, Veeam on Forum. So we're going to post the links in the chat, but if you prefer, we've also got some QR scanners, QR codes here. So get your QR scanners ready. So we have a couple of ebooks and technical guides around both backing up Microsoft Teams data, as well as a bit more of an in-depth guide around how the Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 solution works. Also, if you're interested in trying out the solution, you can go to our website and download a full feature 30-day trial version of the software to install and try it out in your environment. So I'll just keep this page up for a few more seconds whilst you grab those links and QR codes. I think Cassie will have also posted them in the QA. Otherwise, we'll post them at the end. And finally, as I mentioned, we have our regional modern data protection conference coming up, Veeam on Forum. It's scheduled to take place in Sydney and is also available online on the 23rd of August. So if you're interested in registering to attend, learning more about data protection, improving that, you can attend either virtually or in person. You can grab that QR code on the screen now to register, and we'll look forward to seeing you. So with that, I'd just like to thank you all, and hope you found it to be useful, and I'm just going to hand over to Cassie. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Will. Appreciate that. Hope that was insightful for everyone. So my name's Cassie Craig. I look after all the schools in Queensland alongside my counterpart, Dan Marsh, who's our boots on the ground. So if you don't know already, Veeam actually offers a full school tenancy program. So what this means for you is we look at your staff numbers and your student numbers, we combine the two and we apply the 65% off. So for you, this means you get access to leading technology at a heavily discounted rate. So if you'd like to find out anything more, please scan the QR code down the bottom and I'll help you out with initiating a trial or even a quote to see if it's in the budget. So thanks for your time, guys, and over to you, Christian, for Q&A.
Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, Will. It's actually over to me, Dave. I'll just bring up my slide. Great. Okay. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you're all well. We're almost there. I just wanted to give you a really quick update on what's happening in Microsoft Teams. There's a lot happening in this space. I'm sure you've seen with the release of product from vendors like Logitech and Poly. We're certainly seeing an accelerated adoption of MTR solutions across the enterprise and also in the education space. Some of the biggest advantages that we're seeing in the MTR space is simplicity for users, interoperability, of course, with Teams and other platforms like Zoom. But also the cost. The cost is ridiculously lower than your traditional enterprise-grade video conferencing solutions. There are some challenges, however, also, and I'm going to whiz through this a little bit quick because we're just about out of time, and we're just going to do a little bit of feedback right at the end, so hang in there. But some of the challenges around the MTR solutions that we're seeing is around AV and IT convergence. So it's not an AV solution and it's not an IT solution, it's actually both. So we're seeing some challenges in that space where AV companies struggle to understand some of the complexities of Teams and in the back end, and IT companies typically don't have a lot of AV skills. So that's one of the challenges, and in our experience, a lot of the MTR solutions that have gone in for some of our customers often result in a poor outcome because they're treated like IT projects and they really need those additional AV skills as well. The other one is lack of enterprise support. So typically these solutions are multi-vendor. You know, you've got your MTR solution from a Logitech or Poly, you've got your screens on the walls, you've got your taps on the back of the screens, you've got your microphones and cables, etc. So it's not typically a fully supported solution that you might expect from you know, someone like a Cisco, for example. And then finally, the ongoing management, keeping the solution patched and updated to make sure it continues to work as Teams evolves in the workplace as well. So these are some of the challenges that we've had to address for a contract we've just won with the Department of Education. So it's for the provision of Teams room solution right across their corporate environment and their school sites. It's a 5-year contract. It's available to all eligible parties, government and NGOs, including education, so it's available to ISQ schools. And importantly, it includes enterprise support, customer success, and a management platform right across the solutions. So as part of the solution, we've partnered up with Provision Group, who are providing statewide AV installation services and on-site support. And we're utilising Logitech hardware in this instance because it's just the most rounded and reliable solution that on the marketplace we think at the moment. So from a solution perspective at a really high level, we've developed some small, medium and large room bundles, including full bill of materials with services, installation, on-site support, etc. There's a mobile solution we've done as well. We've also developed a scalable scoping and quoting process. So if there is variations to the standard bundles, we can rapidly address those and very quickly scope and quote rooms for a customer anywhere in the state. As I said before, statewide installation and importantly, statewide enterprise support as well. And just to drill a little bit more into that support solution, where we're providing 3 years on-site support with this contract, with all of the MTR equipment and the components, including TVs. So we've got arrangements with Samsung and Sony in that space, with the NUCs with with HP and Lenovo, and with all your mics and cables and all the rest of it. Additional inclusions include next business day advanced replacement, 24/7 service desk, and that means going straight to level 3 too, not level 1 support. We've got the Logitech Sync management platform as well to keep the platform up to date, patched, to help you with that sort of single pane of glass to manage your Teams rooms environments. And for larger implementations, and even potentially for consortia type arrangements with ISQ, and we're still working on this with Logitech, but potentially we can work with ISQ as a group of schools to do what we did for the department, which is provide customer success management over the top, and a sparing solution as well for rapid response to sparing, so to hardware failures. So there's some options in that space. So look, that's a really quick overview of what we're doing in that area. It's pretty exciting. We've done 120 rooms in the corporate environment in QED already. It's been a really successful project. We're expecting to do hundreds of state schools around the state, possibly more. So reach out to Tony or Liz or myself if you'd like more information on what we're doing, because I think it's a pretty good solution in that particular space.